The Ukraine-Russia war has seen bold attacks on military strongholds, with Russia's fortresses serving as critical defense hubs. Ukraine leverages precise intelligence to target key assets, while Russia bolsters its facilities with advanced technology. In 2025, a sudden Ukrainian strike on a $180 million Russian fortress shook the region, unleashing unforeseen consequences. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a devastating assault to an outcome that stunned the world. On a frigid night in 2025, at a heavily fortified Russian fortress in the Donbas region, Ukrainian forces launched a surprise attack. The $180 million stronghold, equipped with laser defenses and advanced radar, was a pivotal command center. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones silently tracked movements, confirming Russian commanders were gathered for a strategy meeting. Suddenly, a salvo of precision-guided missiles from Ukrainian drones screamed down, piercing the fortress's concrete shell. The explosion rocked the earth, flames erupting like a volcano, debris flying like a metal storm. Alarms wailed, but the fortress crumbled in a sea of fire, transforming the battlefield into a chaotic inferno that heralded a brutal war. Russia responded with devastating force. Su-35 jets roared from nearby bases, dropping bunker-busting bombs on Ukrainian positions in Kharkiv, shaking the city to its foundations. Iskander missiles launched from land targeted Ukrainian bases, obliterating logistics hubs in thunder's blasts. Ukraine countered with suicide drones, striking Russian munitions depots, triggering secondary explosions that lit the horizon. A fierce air battle erupted, with jets from both sides clashing in blazing streaks across the sky. Black smoke smothered the heavens, relentless explosions splitting the ground, turning the Donbas into a nightmarish war zone where every moment was laced with death. The conflict escalated into biological warfare with terrifying speed. In desperation, Russia deployed biological agents from secret facilities, releasing toxins into Ukrainian cities, sparking rapid disease outbreaks. Ukraine retaliated by destroying Russian biolabs with guided missiles, inadvertently unleashing pathogens into the air. AI-driven drones clashed in the skies, bursting into fireballs that illuminated the night. Ukrainian hackers infiltrated Russian command systems, disrupting bioweapon deployments, while Russia crippled Ukraine's healthcare network with cyber attacks. The war expanded as international allies joined, transforming Eastern Europe into a biological flashpoint where life and death merged in chaos. Russia launched a massive ground offensive, deploying tanks and infantry to retake lost territory in the Donbas. Ferocious urban battles erupted in Luhansk, with explosions shattering buildings. Ukraine countered with ambushes, using anti-tank missiles to incinerate Russian convoys. A catastrophic biolab breach contaminated water supplies, displacing millions. Neighboring nations like Poland and Romania fortified borders, while NATO deployed forces to contain the spread. The global economy staggered as sanctions disrupted gas supplies, and satellite imagery revealed vast regions cloaked in toxic smoke, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare. The attack's fallout triggered a global environmental crisis. Biological pathogens spread beyond borders, paralyzing healthcare systems across Europe and causing waves of deaths. Contaminated farmland led to severe food shortages. Nations rushed emergency response teams, but insurgent groups seized abandoned zones. Autonomous robots decontaminated infected areas, while relief convoys faced attacks from armed factions. Russia and Ukraine, grappling with environmental disaster, signed a temporary ceasefire, but new bio-insurgent groups emerged from the chaos. The crisis halted the war, but persistent pathogen threats and environmental collapse signaled an unstable future. Drone warfare has become a defining feature of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, with massive swarms shaping the battlefield. Ukraine's innovative tactics have challenged Russia's air defenses, while Russia's industrial might fuels relentless aerial assaults. In 2025, a colossal Ukrainian drone attack on Moscow stunned the world, escalating the war to unprecedented heights. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a sudden aerial onslaught to unforeseen global consequences. On a stormy night in 2025, 370 Ukrainian drones armed with high explosive warheads surged toward Moscow, their engines buzzing like an angry swarm, targeting critical infrastructure in a coordinated strike. Russian radars screamed with alerts as the drones breached initial defenses, weaving through gaps in the S-400 system. The sky darkened with their mass, and the first strikes hit power grids, igniting explosions that lit the city like rogue fireworks. Alarms wailed across Moscow, streets emptying in panic as debris rained down like a tempest. The Kremlin went on red alert, but the sheer volume overwhelmed defenses, turning the capital into a chaotic inferno poised to erupt. Russia's response was immediate and ferocious. Su-57 jets scrambled from airbases, engaging the drone swarm in a deadly aerial dance, missiles streaking through the night in blazing trails. Ground-based lasers fired, vaporizing dozens of drones in blinding flashes, but the swarm adapted, splitting into smaller clusters to evade. Explosions rocked Red Square as a drone struck a government building, flames leaping skyward. Ukrainian operators, from hidden bunkers, adjusted tactics in real time, turning Russia's countermeasures against them. The night air choked with smoke and the roar of engines, transforming Moscow's skyline into a war zone where every shadow held destruction. The conflict plunged into cyberspace with dizzying speed. Russian hackers launched a massive assault on Ukrainian command networks, disrupting drone controls and causing several to crash prematurely. Ukraine retaliated by infiltrating Russia's power grid, blacking out entire districts and sowing chaos in defense commands. In the skies, AI-driven drones collided, erupting in mid-air fireballs that illuminated the panic below. Hypersonic missiles from Russian silos targeted Ukrainian bases, but advanced interceptors turned them into failed comets. The war expanded as NATO allies jammed Russian signals, transforming the conflict into a high-stakes digital battle where every second was a fight for survival amid fire in code. The drone assault sparked ground battles as Russian special forces hunted suspected Ukrainian infiltrators in Moscow. Streets erupted in firefights, explosions shattering buildings as civilians fled in terror. Ukraine countered with precision strikes on Russian supply lines, turning highways into blazing wrecks of twisted metal. In desperation, Russia deployed chemical agents, contaminating neighborhoods and forcing evacuations through choking smoke. The global economy shuddered as oil prices soared from disrupted routes, and satellite imagery showed Moscow's iconic landmarks shrouded in flames. The capital became a labyrinth of destruction, every alley a potential death trap and an escalating nightmare. The attack's fallout ignited global backlash, with international sanctions crippling Russia's economy and sparking internal revolts. Violent protests in St. Petersburg led to a military coup, toppling key leaders. Ukraine seized the moment, launching ground offensives to reclaim territory amid the chaos. Relief convoys poured in, but insurgent factions rose from the rubble, turning former allies into enemies. The crisis paused major hostilities, but the rise of new factions and persistent threats signaled an unstable future. The Caribbean has long been a hotspot for U.S.-Venezuela tensions, with U.S. Navy patrols facing aggressive Venezuelan vessels over oil and migration routes. U.S. interceptions often spark disputes, while Venezuela asserts sovereignty with bold naval maneuvers. In 2025, a Venezuelan attack on a $248 million U.S. tanker escalated into a ferocious confrontation, reshaping regional dynamics and gripping the world in fear. Below is the account of this clash, from a high-seas assault to an outcome that left everyone reeling. On a stormy dawn in 2025, the USNS Yukon, a $248 million U.S. tanker, glided through the Caribbean near Venezuelan waters, its radar scanning for threats. A Venezuelan naval frigate, loaded with anti-ship missiles, approached aggressively, broadcasting demands for the Yukon to withdraw. The Yukon held position, spotlights piercing the rain. The air crackled with tension as Venezuelan sailors aimed weapons.
Suddenly, the frigate fired a missile, the warhead screaming into the Yukon's hull, unleashing a massive explosion that rocked the deck and sent a towering water column skyward. Alarms wailed, black smoke billowed, turning the Caribbean into a powder keg ready to erupt with devastating force. The attack ignited a fierce U.S. response. FA-18 jets from a nearby U.S. carrier roared in, engaging Venezuelan fighters in a whirlwind dogfight over the Caribbean sky. Missiles streaked across the horizon, a Venezuelan jet exploding in a radiant fireball that lit the skyline. The Yukon fired cruise missiles, ripping through the frigate's deck in a blazing inferno. Venezuela countered with anti-ship missiles, one striking a U.S. escort ship, sending water and metal soaring. Smoke and flames consumed the sea, relentless blasts churning the waves, transforming the Caribbean into a chaotic war zone where every swell carried death. The conflict surged into space with terrifying speed. Venezuela used jamming satellites to disrupt U.S. aircraft control systems. The U.S. retaliated with anti-satellite weapons, obliterating a Venezuelan satellite, scattering orbital debris like a meteor shower. In the skies, combat drones from both sides clashed, bursting into fireballs that illuminated the night. Venezuelan hypersonic missiles targeted U.S. ships, but American laser defenses incinerated them in blinding flashes. The war expanded as allies joined, turning the Caribbean into a multinational flashpoint where missiles and black smoke choked everything. Venezuela, backed by allied nations, launched ballistic missiles from land, targeting U.S. bases in Puerto Rico and Florida. The U.S. struck back with a lightning assault, using B-21 stealth bombers to destroy Venezuelan airfields near Caracas. Fires and smoke rose from flattened bases, sowing panic across the region. Other Caribbean nations were drawn to the brink, with Cuba and Nicaragua bolstering borders. The global economy reeled as oil prices skyrocketed. Gulf of Mexico shipping halted. Satellite imagery revealed massive fires and black smoke blanketing the region, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare in the Caribbean. The conflict's fallout triggered a regional refugee crisis. Destroyed infrastructure forced millions of Venezuelans to flee, flooding borders into Colombia and Brazil for safety. Refugee camps overflowed, diseases spreading in the chaos as international aid struggled to keep up. The U.S. and affected nations organized emergency relief, but insurgent groups seized lawless zones. Autonomous robots cleared contaminated areas, while international task forces hunted insurgents. The U.S. and Venezuela, facing humanitarian disaster, were forced into a temporary ceasefire, but new rebel factions emerged from the turmoil. The crisis paused the war, but swelling refugee flows and persistent disease threats signaled an unstable future. The Ukraine-Russia war has seen numerous surprise attacks, with Russia's superports emerging as critical strategic targets. Ukraine often leverages intelligence to time its strikes, while Russia holds celebrations to boost morale. In 2025, a Ukrainian attack on a Russian superport during a commander's celebration shifted the war's dynamics, shocking the world. Below is the account of this confrontation, from a perfectly timed ambush to an unexpected outcome that left everyone reeling. On a crisp evening in 2025, at the Novorossiysk superport on the Black Sea, Russian senior commanders gathered for a victory celebration, complete with vodka and fireworks. Ukraine had been monitoring through intelligence, waiting for the moment when all were present. Ukrainian reconnaissance drones glided silently, confirming the target. Suddenly, a 3,000-kilogram guided bomb from a Ukrainian jet screamed down, piercing the port's concrete defenses. The explosion shook the sea, debris flying like a tempest, and the superport collapsed in a blaze of fire. Alarms wailed across Russia. Rescue teams scrambled, but the devastation was immense. The battlefield turned into a fiery abyss, setting the stage for a ferocious naval port war. Russia struck back instantly, launching Caliber missiles from nearby warships, pounding Ukrainian positions in Odessa with devastating force. Russian Su-34 jets roared in, dropping bombs on Ukrainian bunkers, shaking the city to its core.
Ukraine countered with lightning airstrikes on Russian bases in Crimea, targeting munitions depots. A brutal air battle erupted, with jets from both sides clashing in deadly chases. Black smoke choked the sky, relentless explosions trembling the ground, transforming the Black Sea into a chaotic war zone where every minute pulsed with danger. The conflict surged into hybrid naval-air warfare with terrifying speed. Russia deployed nuclear submarines to hunt Ukrainian fleets, triggering radioactive leaks and underwater clashes. Ukraine retaliated with underwater drones, destroying Russian ships in massive subsurface explosions. In the skies, AI-driven drones collided, bursting into fireballs that illuminated the night. Ukrainian hackers infiltrated Russian command systems, disrupting submarine orders, while Russia countered by crippling Ukraine's power grid. The war expanded as allies joined, turning the Black Sea into a multi-layered flashpoint where naval and air forces fused in pandemonium.
Russia launched a massive ground offensive, aiming to seize Ukrainian ports to dominate the Black Sea. Tank convoys rolled into Mykolaiv, sparking ferocious urban battles. Ukraine responded with rapid ambushes, using guided missiles to incinerate Russian armor. A colossal explosion destroyed a Russian nuclear depot, unleashing radioactive fallout and displacing thousands. Neighboring nations were drawn in, with Turkey bolstering its borders. The global economy reeled as oil prices skyrocketed from disrupted shipping routes, and satellite imagery showed vast regions shrouded in smoke, marking an unprecedented phase of savage warfare.
The attack's fallout triggered a global humanitarian crisis. Destroyed infrastructure forced millions to flee, flooding borders into Europe and Russia. Refugee camps overflowed, diseases spreading in the chaos as international aid struggled to keep pace. The US and Europe organized emergency relief, but insurgent groups exploited the turmoil to rise. Autonomous robots cleared radioactive zones, while relief convoys delivered supplies under fire. Russia and Ukraine, facing humanitarian disaster, were forced into a temporary ceasefire, but new rebel factions emerged from the chaos. The crisis paused the war, but swelling refugee flows and persistent disease threats signaled an unstable future.